But in my opinion, body literacy is a human right. Everyone should know that your menstrual cycle is now considered your fifth vital sign. So along with your breathing rate, your heart rate, your other vital signs, your menstrual cycle is communication to you from your body about the health of your cycle and what's going on with your hormones. And you can find out a lot of information about all of that from tracking your cycle.
Hi, Kristy. Welcome to the Speaker Salon YouTube channel. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I wanted to interview you because not only are you really smart, but you help solve a problem that is very important and affects pretty much half the planet. And this topic was my entry into the health freedom movement and learning how to be a better advocate for myself when I go to the doctor. And so for listeners who are here, Kristy Routt is a fertility educator, and she's got this incredible program and that she's going to tell us all about. And we got to work together a little bit to launch your brand and get your website in order and all that. So this conversation is going to be a mix of learning what fertility awareness methods are and how she helps women, and also just personal branding and how to package information. So my two favorite topics. So Kristy, how did you stumble upon this topic, and why did you decide to make it such a huge part of your life?
A couple of reasons. I randomly, several years ago, went to a women's retreat. I saw it online, grabbed a friend of mine, and we drove about 5 hours. Really didn't know what I was getting myself into. I had no idea that the woman who was hosting the retreat was a naturopathic doctor who specialized in female hormones. And she also teaches fertility awareness. And the first thing that kind of shocked me out of my complacency was her saying that we should not be using traditional tampons because of the chemicals that were in them and what that actually does to your body and what it does to your menstrual cycle. So cotton is one of the most heavily sprayed crops in the world with pesticides. And you put that into the most absorbent place in the female body, and it causes you to bleed more, causes your period to last longer, causes you to cramp more, and no telling what else it's doing to your sensitive organs. And she also said, they don't really have to tell you what's inside of a tampon because it is considered a medical device, and therefore they don't have to tell you what the ingredients are. I was angry about that. I was upset for my younger self because I had gone through a lot of pain when I was younger, not realizing why, but it was when I started using tampons. And I just started researching that topic. And then I ended up getting certified to teach women how to be able to either prevent pregnancy or achieve pregnancy if they want to with a certain type of fertility awareness method. There are a lot of different fertility awareness methods. They are not all the same. And there are a lot of women who either don't want to be on the birth control pill for one reason or another, either because of their beliefs or because they don't want to deal with the side effects. They can't take it because some of the side effects are so bad. And a lot of women don't know that you actually can just use the signs that your body is giving you to know when you're fertile, and you can prevent pregnancy or achieve pregnancy like that. So I got trained to teach women how to do that.
I think this topic is so huge, and I'm almost 40 now, and I really have kind of taken it for granted. Body literacy, your website's called mybodyliteracy.com, and which is such a great phrase to describe it. But when I was first learning this, before I had my kids, I was so confused by the information, and it just seemed so incredible that I wasn't taught it. It just seems like such a betrayal that we weren't taught this when we were teenagers.
Yes, I actually taught middle school for 20 years. I mean, I've had several different careers, in my life, and that was the first career that I had. And you could teach a version of this even to middle school age girls because they have a right to know how their body works as well. And I think it's a It's a travesty that it's not taught to teens. Yeah.
I actually taught the Billings ovulation method briefly, and I had this phrase that I used, and I would tell women, if you're smart enough to know when you have a cold, you're smart enough to tell when you're fertile.
Right.
And
Right.
it's such a delicate topic that you have to dance around. So kind of you ease people into understanding these biomarkers
Well,
without getting my YouTube channel canceled, please.
I focus on three different hormonal biomarkers. One is your temperature, the other one is your cervical fluid, and you can call it a lot of different names, but to not get your YouTube channel flagged, we'll say fluid, and LH, which is luteinizing hormone. Now, there are a lot of different fertility awareness methods. If you're not tracking your cervical fluid, you're probably not going to have a very high effectiveness from the method you're using. The first fertility awareness method that was taught was called the rhythm method, and it gave fertility awareness methods a bad name, really, because the rhythm method is not really based on any hormonal biomarkers. It's not based on temperature. It's not based on your cervical fluid. It's not based on anything except a calendar. And it tells women that they ovulate either exactly on or about on day 14 every month, or that's not how it works. We do not ovulate on day 14 every month. Almost no women does. That is not true. Like, okay, so in a textbook perfect cycle, yes, you would ovulate on day 14. It almost never happens that is what a woman will when a woman will ovulate every single month. Too
Especially
many
now with all
factors
the
are affecting it.
toxins, when everybody's got a chronic illness.
Yes. One of the main things is stress. And so you can have a lot of different types of stress, not just stress where we feel like we're overwhelmed or anxiety, that type of stress, but it can be from overeating, undereating, overexercising, underexercising. It can be from illness. It can be from a lot of different things where your body will think that it's not safe to ovulate right now because it's not a great time to be supporting a potential pregnancy. I need to be more worried about my own survival. I might not survive a pregnancy. So we're just not going to ovulate this month, or we're going to delay it. And so, because of the way we live most of the time and all the toxins, like you're saying, most months we do not ovulate on day 14 every single time. I mean, it's very unusual for that to be your cycle every single month. So, the rhythm method told women that they ovulated on day 14 every month, or it looked at when they ovulated for the past few months and got an average of that. And then they gave you a range. They said, you're probably ovulating, within this range based on your previous cycles. But because of all the reasons I just listed a second ago, that doesn't work either. And the rhythm method had a failure rate of 25%. So that means 1 out of every 4 women who was using the rhythm method got pregnant with an unintentional pregnancy. That's not great stats.
It's unacceptable.
So all of fertility awareness methods kind of got lumped in with that. And so people don't trust them, understandably.
There was another reason too, I have to point out. Planned Parenthood posted in their literature and on their website that fertility awareness based methods were something like 86, 87% effective. But that was for women who were trying to achieve pregnancy. So they manipulated the literature, and they didn't clarify that it was actually the success rate for women trying to have a baby. So there's little stuff like that all over where you think like you just have to take a second look at what the deeper meaning behind the stats are.
And I think that there are a lot of people who think that it's kind of a step back for feminism, sort of like the people who are teaching fertility awareness are trying to say that you shouldn't be on the birth control pill. It's ended up being a feminism issue. But in my opinion, this is nothing to do with religion. This is just the feminism side. But in my opinion, body literacy is a human right, period. Yeah. No matter your religious views, no matter your political views, no matter your views on any subject, body literacy is a human right. Yeah. So my stance is that everyone deserves to have all of the information. You deserve to know how medical birth control works, what the possible side effects are, and not just on a little pill, on the information that comes in your pill packet that no one ever reads. You deserve a verbal conversation where someone tells you, no, these are actually the significant risks. And also, this is how your body works. This is how you could prevent pregnancy without being on medical birth control. This is what the effectiveness ratings are. Here's all that information. Now you are smart enough to make a decision about what is best for you, period. But it starts with being given all the information. And that's the problem.
Exactly. And I appreciate you bringing up religion. I mean, you, I think, are a great resource to know about because you do approach it both from a secular point of view, and you tolerate the religious perspective too, because you live in Louisiana and there's all these crazy Catholics roaming around. But I think that a lot of people have missed out on this information because it hasn't been making the rounds in in secular circles. It's just been confined to, because it was Catholic doctors that discovered the fertility awareness method. It was the Billings, John and Evelyn Billings,
Right.
but they went to India. um they were Australian, and then promoted it in India and China because the punishment for women in those societies in the 1970s and 80s were so severe. Like, if you had a second child in China, you would be absolutely like tortured, and they would abort the baby in front of you and call you a really cruel names and say it was all your fault. And then in India, they would sterilize you against your will, and just really severe consequences. So they didn't do the PR rounds in America or Europe or these Western societies. So I feel like we're kind of catching up. And then the birth control pill was such a blockbuster success. Like, they made gobs and gobs of money, and then they made gobs and gobs of money off of the IUD. So what are some of the risks of the IUD and the pill and all those things?
Well, okay, so there's hormonal birth control. So you're talking about the pill, the patch, the ring, the shot, the IUD, want a certain type of IUD. Now there's medical birth control that's not hormonal, which is the copper IUD. And I can talk about the differences if you want me to, how the copper IUD is different. I still don't think it's a great option, but we can talk about how it's different so that you're given all the information and people can make a decision for themselves, like I said. But the way that regular hormonal birth control works, so it gives you a low level of synthetic hormone. Some are combination pills, meaning they have estrogen, a synthetic estrogen, and they have a synthetic progesterone called progestin. Now, they give you a low level all month long. Now, these synthetic hormones do not act the same way in your body. They do not have the same benefits as your natural hormones. We can talk in a minute about what the benefits are of your natural hormones, but you don't get those with the synthetic version. But what the synthetic version does is it prevents you from ovulating. In order for you to ovulate every month, you have to have there's certain hormones, there's a communication going on between your brain and your ovaries. And it's like dominoes, it's a feedback loop, and one hormone is triggering the next, and back and forth like that. And at some point during your cycle, you get a very swift rise in estrogen. I think it rises, if I remember right, it's 40% over a very short period of time is the rise. When that happens, it triggers LH, which triggers ovulation. Okay. Well, if you're getting this really low level all month long, that is building up your uterine lining just a tiny bit. You never get that swift rise. It never triggers ovulation. And it's estrogen that's building up the uterine lining. And so you never get that really thick buildup. So when you do have your period, which we can talk about that in a minute because it's not a true period on birth control, but when you do have a period, it's lighter because your estrogen hasn't been as high. So your uterine lining hasn't thickened up as much. And that's what's happening when you have a period. Your uterine lining is shedding. Okay, so trying to think of what to talk about next. But so you do not have a true period when you're on birth control. When they first made the birth control pill, the men who made it thought that women would think that it was unnatural if they didn't have a period. The original way that they made the pill, you didn't have a period at all. It's kind of like, I don't know what they call it now because I took the birth control pill for 20 years, not knowing what the side effects were. But when I was taking it, I know that they had one that you just keep taking it. You never take those placebo pills, the sugar pills, which is when you have your period. If you have a pack of birth control pills, 3 weeks are one color, and then there's a week that's either white or they're a different color. That's because those are placebo pills, sugar pills. It's the 1 week that they're not giving you that synthetic hormone. And so your uterine lining sheds. It's not a real period. It's only a real period if you ovulated. And the reason that's a problem is because ovulation is how you make your natural hormones. When you're on the synthetic hormones, what are some of the risks? There's an 80% higher risk. If you are a teen and you start taking the birth control pill, you have an 80% higher risk of getting prescribed antidepressants.
Wow.
And yes, 80%. And you have a higher risk in your 20s and 30s also, but it's not as exaggerated as the 80%. And the sad thing about it is that those young girls who start taking the birth control pill, if they do have that where they develop depression, it's likely that even in their later years, if they stop taking the pill, that problem doesn't go away because they started taking those synthetic hormones when their brain was still developing.
Oh.
And there's a chance that they just altered the way that their brain works. Yeah. So that's a big one that's not talked about a lot. So another way that the hormonal birth control pill works, other than stopping ovulation, it thins out the uterine lining so that if you maybe you didn't take the pill at the right time or it just didn't work right and you actually did ovulate, if an egg got fertilized, your uterine lining might not be thick enough for it to implant in, so you would just lose the pregnancy before you ever knew you were pregnant. That's the second way that it works. And the third way that it works is it changes your cervical fluid. So you make two types of cervical fluid. You make one type that's nourishing to sperm, and you make one type that actually kills sperm. When you're not fertile, you're making the type that is not hospitable to sperm. And what the birth control pill or what hormonal birth control does is it makes you make kind of that type of fluid all the time. Mm-hmm. And so your cervical crypts, which is where you make your cervical fluid at the base of your cervix, those cervical crypts will kind of atrophy because it's kind of like you don't use it, you lose it. And so what happens to a lot of women is when they get off, if they've been on the birth control pill for a long time, their cervical crypts have atrophied. When they get off of it and decide that they do want to get pregnant, some women have an issue. Sometimes they have, a long time, a year or even longer before their fertility returns. And one of those reasons is because there's some women's cervical crypts have atrophied. So even if you're ovulating, if you're not making the right type of cervical fluid, you might have an issue getting pregnant.
That's a big deal. I have to insert a story here. I had, when I was in college, I took the Depo shot. So not the pills, but just, seemed like a hack to just get a shot. And then you only have to get one every 6 months or every year or something. And I bled for months, every day, for months. And I would cry and it was awkward. And I would be in public and I would just cry. In fact, there was this woman, I was in downtown San Francisco and I was just crying on the steps of the Union Square. Like there's little steps on the side of it that go up, and I was just crying, and this woman had to sit down. She sat down with me for an hour to comfort me, and I couldn't explain why I was crying. And we call women, crazy and all these things, but it has a direct impact on your mental health.
Yes. So the Depo shot has been shown to be the worst one on your bones. So when you make your own natural hormones, estrogen and progesterone, there's not a single tissue or system in your body that's not affected by your reproductive hormones. There are a lot of women who think, I don't need to be ovulating because I don't want to get pregnant right now. And I don't need to worry about my fertility until I'm ready to have a baby, if I ever decide I want to have a baby. But that's a mistake because your reproductive hormones, like I said, affect every single system in your body, from your bone health, your brain health, your mood, your libido, all of it, everything, your metabolism, your immune system, everything. I mean, your hormones are who you are. It's who you are. Yeah. And you just flatline them, when you're on hormonal birth control. The only way you can make natural hormones is by allowing yourself to ovulate. So that's where what I teach comes in, because if you know all of this and you care about your health, and so you say, okay, maybe I should be allowing myself to ovulate, but I'm not ready to get pregnant right now. What do I do? Mm-hmm. I mean, there are barrier methods, but if you would rather not use barrier methods, what do you do? Right. And so the other option is to learn how your body actually works, because it's really not that difficult to be able to tell when you're ovulating.
That is true. You have an app that you recommend, which is the app that I use, the Fem app. And it's really interesting to see when you start to chart how your body and how your mood changes, and you see the patterns, when you start to pick up on the patterns, and like it always pans out, like your romantic drive, how we put it, always lines up with your peak ovulation day, like clockwork. Yes. And training women to be able to understand that. So maybe like you don't go out for drinks with the cute boy on your peak ovulation day, like on your fertile window. Like you got to be in check that part of the month.
Right.
Responsibility.
Or if you are in a relationship or you are married, it's really helpful to have your partner know what part of the cycle that you're in so you can plan together whether you want to have a child or not. And you know when the risky time is.
Right.
You both
Right.
know when the risky time is, right? So
Exactly.
you can both kind of be responsible for the outcome.
And also, I don't know if this is too risky for YouTube, but for rape victims, the process of understanding if she's pregnant or not can be a second trauma. And so if the woman's been charting and she knows that, well, there's no way that I could be pregnant because I wasn't in my fertile window, that can alleviate some additional stress. Heaven forbid anything like that ever happens to her. And there's so many times, like I remember when I was younger and I didn't know how my body worked, and I would be stressing about, oh, I'm afraid I'm pregnant. I'm afraid I'm pregnant, when I didn't need to be stressing at all.
Right.
There was no need to stress. So
Right.
we keep women, there's this unspoken burden that sexually active women have to bear on this fear. And then our culture, our dating culture is so messed up. It is so messed up. And we could explore that more, but for the purposes of this conversation, it just feels like we have so much relief to offer the women of the world if we can just teach them how to identify their fertile window. Yes. A lot of problems go away.
Another thing that tracking your cycle, which is what fertility awareness teaches you to track your cycle, can help with, is some women who are, say they're trying to get pregnant and they think that they have a problem conceiving. Once they start tracking their cycle, they realize that the problem isn't actually conceiving. You can actually tell when you track your cycle if you're pregnant before a pregnancy test would show positive. So it's called a triphasic chart with you can really see it with your temperatures. And if you have a triphasic chart, and what that means is your temperatures stay in a certain low level before you ovulate. After you ovulate, they jump up and they stay in a different range. If you are not pregnant, they'll fall back down when you start your period again. But if you are pregnant, they go up to a third level and stay in a third range. That's why it's called a triphasic chart. And that will happen, like I said, before a pregnancy test would show positive. So if you are tracking and you're trying to get pregnant and you see that happening, you see you're having a triphasic chart, and then a few days later you start your period again, you do not have a conception problem. You have a problem with the fertilized egg implanting into the uterus, which is most likely a progesterone issue.
Yes.
And yes. And you see, this is a conversation. This is going to help you when you talk to your doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and progesterone is the baby food. So the embryo is starved of food because your progesterone levels aren't. And that's a simple solution. It's easy to add progesterone.
Well, it's affected by a lot of different lifestyle issues. I like to say, there's no biohacks. There's no supplements that are going to fix everything if you don't have kind of the basics in place. So you really do have to have a healthy lifestyle, nutrition, exercise, detoxing, like we talked about earlier, getting this and the stress. Stress is one of the major things. So all of that will affect your hormone levels. And so in the first half of your cycle, estrogen builds up that uterine lining. And then in the second half, progesterone maintains it. If your progesterone isn't high enough, it will not maintain that uterine lining. And so you could lose potential pregnancy. And it's a different, really, if you're dealing with that with your doctor, it's a different treatment than if you have a conception issue. That's completely different. And another thing I want to point out is what a lot of women don't think about with fertility, because like you said, there's a great burden on women when it comes to fertility, is that 50% of the time it's a male issue. That's been proven. 50% of the time it's a male issue. So if you are trying to conceive and you've been trying to conceive for several months and it's not happening, you should probably consider some male fertility testing. And that's really easy to have done.
Yeah. Well, let's pivot a little bit and talk about where people can find you and the importance of kind of getting help. I know when I first started to learn this, like I needed to take a class, and just like driving, you need some professional help in the beginning, and then you can kind of steer the ship on your own. So I know you just started a podcast. What's the name of the podcast? What all do you got going on?
I've got a Vibrant Fertility podcast. That's what the podcast is called. I have my Instagram is Natural Birth Control Coach, and my website is mybodyliteracy.com. If you go to mybodyliteracy.com, you click on Work with Kristy, and all of my offerings are right there. So I have all the way from a free workshop where you learn everything you probably wanted to know about fertility awareness. I have a low ticket mini course teaching you everything about fertility awareness. Now, these two, the workshop and the course, they're teaching you how it works, what it's all about, so that you know what kind of tools that you need, so that you know if it's something you want to pursue. You know, once you do those things, if it's right for you, if you really want to learn the method. If you really want to use this for birth control, you could spend a lot of time trying to do it on your own. But if you have a fertility awareness teacher that's been trained and certified, the effectiveness rating goes up tremendously.
Yeah, people, they just take 2 months, 3 months and just get a coach. It's worth it.
Yes. Yeah. So you're going to have questions. You're going to. And it takes practice. So I do have a group program. It's called the Fertility Awareness Collective, where I have on-demand curriculum that you watch. And then I also have a private community, a private podcast, and we do cycle lab workshops where you send me your chart and I review your chart for you. So there's, if you choose to join that program, there's 3 ways that you can actually contact me and ask me questions. Because like I said, you will have questions. It takes a little bit of practice. And if you are having a lot of unwanted period symptoms, a lot of period pain, we're not really, that's normal, as meaning a lot of women have those issues, but it's not really healthy. We're supposed to have a period that we barely even notice at all, other than the bleeding. That's it. And every time I say that to a woman, they're like, really? Like, yes, really. That's what a healthy period is like. So if you're having a lot of unwanted period or PMS symptoms, I help with that within the course also. And I just want to say that what's really controlling those symptoms is the health of your eggs. I want to mention that too, because a lot of women don't think about that. They think about the health of their eggs when they're ready to get pregnant, but it's the health of your eggs and those follicles that are holding the eggs, because those follicles are what create your hormones. And so that is really affecting a lot of what?
The corpus luteum.
Yes, that's what creates your progesterone. If you don't ovulate, you're not making a corpus luteum, so you're not making progesterone, hence, the whole thing. But like I said, because it's the health of those eggs, and the truth is we're born with all the eggs we're ever going to have, but those eggs take 2 or 3 months, usually about 90 days, to mature before you ovulate. And during that 90 days, your lifestyle is affecting the health of that egg. So once that egg ovulates, what you've been doing for the past 3 months is really going to control your health, not just your reproductive health. And so what you're doing, how you're feeling now, is probably related to how you were treating yourself about 3 months ago. Right. I say that just because, if you're having a lot of issues, you might want to start sooner rather than later, because it does take a little bit of time.
Right. It reminds me of hair. One of the reasons why we like long, shiny hair in women, because it's proof that they've been well nourished for a long time. That's why it's a evidence of fertility, is because, anyways.
Yes. Yeah.
So I want to just talk a little bit, this is kind of channel I use to help people talk about personal branding as well. So before we close, let's talk a little bit about our journey with your fertility personal brand, because you did pivot from another career. And so when you first started, some of the steps that we did when we were talking and building was finding the right names for things, which I think is especially challenging in your case because it is such a sensitive, intimate topic. So how have you walk us through the journey of like selecting the right name for your coaching business?
I remember having several conversations with you about that. I remember you asking me if I ever wanted to sell the business in the future or if I wanted to work forever. That is why it's not called my name, because I said I didn't want to work forever. I wanted to sell it at some point. I do remember, which I haven't exactly adhered to this now that I'm going to say it out loud, but to keep that consistent. Mm-hmm. So I know that my Instagram handle now is Natural Birth Control Coach, but everything used to be My Body Literacy. across the board, which I think is what you recommended. But you kind of helped with everything. You helped me set up the website, the colors, which graphics to use. You helped me. I was doing an online summit where I interviewed 25, I think I had 25 different guests that I interviewed. And you helped me with that entire process, just what I wanted the website to feel like, what fonts I should use, everything, top to bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, you did great too. I remember one of the big first things that you did was you got a photographer. So you got
Yes.
new headshots in, which looked great, and they were cozy and they were warm and they were friendly.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, you did phenomenal. And they had these beautiful kind of burnt orange tones to it, and you had some identity. We did identity work because you also are a yoga instructor, and then you also helped support you and your kids through real estate. And so a lot of times what people do when they have multifaceted skills and certifications and things that they paid money to learn how to do, and so it's they don't want to abandon it because they invested a lot of time and money into these different skill sets, but they solve different problems for people. So each social media account has to be dedicated to more or less like one problem that you solve.
Yes. And I did have everything together. So you helped me separate that. I think the big thing is it confuses people. And if people are confused, they just don't do anything.
Right.
Yeah. If they're confused about what you do or what you offer, they're not going to stick around.
Right. And I think people want to know that they're hiring the best at that problem. Like if I'm getting brain surgery, I want someone who's 100% dedicated to the art and science of brain surgery. And it's you want someone who you just there's proof that they put in the hours. And I mean you have put in the hours, but you're a full human being with many interests and skills and talents. You've done a
Yes,
really
and
good job.
it is it's an emotional process that you go through. Building an online business, I think a lot of people get into it because they think it's going to be easier than, their 9 to 5. And it is in some ways. It's easier because you make your own schedule, but emotionally, it's much more difficult because you're taking something. Usually when people are making online businesses, they're taking something that they're so passionate about, that they care so much about. It's part of them, and then you're just putting it out there in the world for everyone to judge. So it's an emotional kind of journey you're going on. It's not just business. So it's difficult. So it does help to have someone like you who's objective, who's not emotionally connected to it, to tell this looks better than that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, just a second set of eyes is very valuable for sure. I think, well, I am kind of passionate about your topic, and so I was really interested in putting energy
That's
into your
true. You are. Yeah.
business because I know the value of it. But so I definitely wanted to see you succeed, and I'm glad that you're doing it, and I see your videos and you're doing an excellent job. It's one of the reasons I want to do this interview is because I want to send you out to people.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, and allow people to be familiar. One thing that I have personally been going through with online business and branding is the visibility fears. And I think especially for your case, it's like this really intimate topic that there's potential for getting trolls. There's and you have to somehow create like a safe corner of the internet to talk about a lot of unique challenges. So have you spent any time thinking about that? Like how you feel safe showing up online, even with these kind of delicate topics?
I still feel vulnerable talking about these things. I've only had a few negative comments, and it's usually from women who are kind of saying, how dare you kind of push women to not be on birth control whenever it's such a dangerous time to have an unplanned pregnancy. And I think what they mean is that you can't as easily get an abortion. So sorry, I shouldn't have said that word on YouTube. Sorry. You
We'll
can
see if it dings us or not.
bleep it out if you need to. You can bleep
Maybe
that
I'll bleep
section.
it out.
But I'm not telling you not to be on birth control. It's back to what I said, with any medication that you take, there are risks. And I just think that you have the right to know what those risks are. And you have the right to know what your other options are and to choose for yourself once you have all of the information. And that's all I can say back to it. Um, there's nothing else I can say. But I do feel vulnerable talking about it. Honestly, I feel more vulnerable talking about it if it's people that I know see it, people in my hometown. If it's just a stranger on the internet, it's much easier. Yeah.
Right. I think the risk of when you start to feel passionate about something and you got skin in the game and you put your reputation on the line and you put a stake in the ground on a topic, you make yourself a target to people who disagree with you. And that is probably the biggest challenge of having a personal brand these days, is the illusion of everybody getting along. Like, it's not this kumbaya existence anymore. It's, you're fighting for something. And if you're fighting for something, you have to kind of get comfortable with not conflict, but in a sense, like vocalizing why you develop the opinion you do and making a case. And so for people who aren't comfortable being disagreeable in any way, then having an information business or education, because you're teaching, but it makes it almost impossible if you're not willing to have hard conversations with people about
I think it
yeah.
No, you're right. But I think if you have strong convictions about it and you do have reasons to back up what you're saying, it's easier to have those conversations. And then if you don't agree, then you just agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, you will if you put your stake in the ground and say, this is my opinion on this issue, you are going to get people who disagree with you, and they're not always nice about it. Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on the hour mark. I feel like we covered the main points. I really want to direct people to your community and to and for people watching this, she knows her stuff. She knows what she's talking about on this topic. And I know that, some woman, young or old, who could benefit from cycle charting. And it's not just for women who are in romantic relationships. There's nuns that use this to track their health. You can identify cancer early on if you start to see irregularities in the cycle. So this is something every woman should know about, and Kristy's an amazing resource, and she tackles it from several different angles. Kristy, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to say, but I just want to thank you for agreeing to do this, and I bless your community and in your class, because I know you're going to help a lot of people.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. The only other thing I think I would say is that everyone should know that your menstrual cycle is now considered your fifth vital sign. So along with your breathing rate, your heart rate, your other vital signs, your menstrual cycle is communication to you from your body about the health of your cycle and what's going on with your hormones. And you can find out a lot of information about all of that from tracking your cycle. Yep. So it's a good resource for you. And when you track your cycle, you're making a health record for yourself that you can use to advocate for yourself with your doctor also.
Very good point. Yes. Also, you can help women who need to get up their courage as advocating for themselves in the doctor's office. That's part of it.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for the interview. For everybody watching, you can get a seat in Kristy's class down at the link below. And then if you're interested in personal branding help, I've got my brand therapy group on School, which you're welcome to join. It's a free group. And then I have my book. My book is Beauty First Method, Instantly Communicate Your Value. And that's really great for people starting out in their personal branding journey. That's linked below. So Kristy Routt, it's great talking to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Alana. Mm-hmm.